In the annals of history, no name strikes terror like that of Queen Vaeloria, the unmerciful, the most ruthless sovereign the world has ever known. Her reign was written in blood, her legacy carved from the bones of her enemies. On the night of her coronation, Queen Vaeloria ordered the execution of every noble who had ever doubted her. But she did not merely kill them, she made their families watch. As the heads fell, she whispered to the crowd, "Mercy is the luxury of the weak, and I am never weak." This is the story of the most merciless ruler in history. A queen who carved her name into the bones of her enemies. A woman who turned an empire into her slaughterhouse. The story of Queen Vaeloria the Unmerciful. Hi guys, Tell MY Tales here, where legends never die. Because we keep them alive. In a world of forgotten heroes, fallen kings, and whispered myths, there is one place where their stories still breathe. One channel where the past screams to be heard. Welcome to my YouTube channel and family, Tell My Tales, where history isn't just remembered, it's relive. You've heard their names. Now, hear their truth. From the most ruthless queens and kings to the most tragic heroes, from cursed artifacts to battles lost to time, we don't just tell stories. We resurrect them. The dead are listening. Are you? Subscribe, comment, like, share and join the Legion of the Forgotten. Every tyrant has a beginning. Every monster was once a child. But not all children are innocent, and some are born with darkness in their veins. In the ancient times of the kingdom of Vorindal, a baby was born. Vaeloria entered the world not with a whimper, but a scream, a sound so piercing the midwives swore it was more like a raven's shriek than a child's cry. Her mother, Queen Vaeloria, a cold and calculating woman, took one look at her daughter's unnervingly pale eyes and said, "This one will either be the death of us, or the death of everyone else." Her father, King Drothmar the Feeble, barely glanced at her. He had wanted a son, an heir strong enough to hold their fracturing kingdom together. But Vaeloria, she was just another disappointment, or so he thought. By the time she could walk, Vaeloria was already different. Born to a weak king and a scheming noblewoman, Vaeloria learned early that mercy was the luxury of the doomed. At 3 years old, she was caught drowning her pet songbird in a fountain. When asked why, she simply said, "It sang too much." At 5, she convinced a kitchen boy to steal sweets for her, then watched silently as he was whipped for it, her face blank. At 7, she slit the throat of a stray cat that scratched her, and smiled as the life left its eyes. Her nursemaids feared her. The courtiers whispered. But her mother, Queen Vaeloria, saw potential. While other girls played with dolls, Vaeloria played with secrets, and secrets, in a royal court, are deadlier than any blade. Vaeloria's first true lesson in cruelty came at 10 years old, when her father finally sired a son, Prince Darien, the heir he had always wanted. Overnight, Vaeloria went from neglected to unwanted. The court fawned over the babe, already whispering of the strong king he would become. This bothered Vaeloria, but she decided to keep it to herself. No one ever gave her any kind of emotion, and this made her see the throne already on the young prince. So, she decided to act. One winter night, the young prince was sleeping in his chambers. Vaeloria entered without anyone noticing. She went straight to where the prince was sleeping peacefully. She took a pillow and covered it on his face. She watched him struggle for his life until he stopped breathing. Then she whispered in his ears, "Brother, I have come to learn this. Power isn't given. It's taken." After that she left the chambers. She killed her only brother, who was now 2 years, and Vaeloria 12 years. That was the first time taking a human's life. When the palace maidens went to care for the young prince, they found his lifeless body laying cold as ice on his bed. They rushed and called the king to tell him what they have seen with the young prince, and king order for the physicians. The physicians came and examined the body. They called it a tragedy. The king called it a curse. But Vaeloria, She never spoke a word, not when they buried him, not when her father wept, not even when her mother looked at her with something like pride. She said to herself, I am securing my positions, and if anyone gets in the way or try to change me, they will face the same fate. Queen Vaeloria, now certain of her daughter's gifts, took Vaeloria under her wing. No more nursery rhymes. No more childish games. Instead, she taught her poison, disguised as courtly etiquette; manipulation, dressed up as diplomacy; murder, framed as necessary sacrifice. By 13, Vaeloria could recite the lineages of every noble house and exactly which ones needed pruning. By 14, she could hold a smile while slipping venom into a rival's wine. By 15, she had orchestrated her first public execution, a disloyal duke, flayed alive on her command. In a banquet hall, Vaeloria, now a striking but chillingly composed teenager, toasting with a goblet as the duke's screams echo outside. Some children fear the dark. Vaeloria, she became it. At 16, Vaeloria faced her last test. Her mother summoned her to the royal crypts, where the bones of their ancestors stared down in silent judgment. In her hands, a dagger. Prove you are worthy of the throne, Vaeloria commanded. Prove you have no weakness. And then, she ordered Vaeloria to kill her favorite handmaiden, the only person who had ever shown her kindness. The next morning, the handmaiden was found cold in her bed, a single black rose on her chest. And Vaeloria? She stood beside her mother, her eyes empty. Queen Vaeloria smiled. Now you are ready. And so, the monster became a queen. The wicked are not born, they are made. And Vaeloria? She was crafted to perfection. But her reign of terror? Oh, that's only the beginning. A storm rages over the blackened spires of Castle Vorindal. Thunder cracks like the bones of the fallen. A lone figure stands atop the battlements, her cloak whipping like a vengeful spirit in the wind. The sound of a sword being dragged across stone. A slow, creeping dread fills the air. They say power is taken, not given. But Vaeloria, she did not take it. She ripped it from the throat of the world. The battlefield was a graveyard before the first arrow flew. King Drothmar, weak, foolish Drothmar, had led his armies into the teeth of rebellion, desperate to prove himself a warrior. Instead, he died as he lived, a coward, gurgling his last breaths into the mud, his banner trampled beneath the boots of traitors. When the raven reached Vaeloria, she did not weep. She did not rage. She smiled. Finally, she murmured, running a finger along the edge of her father's shattered sigil. The throne is mine. The day of the coronation was here, and the nobles expected a puppet. A grieving girl queen, soft and malleable, to be bent to their will. They were wrong. Vaeloria's coronation was not a celebration. It was a warning. Clad in a gown of blackened silk, stitched, some whispered, from the cloaks of her father's assassins, she knelt before the high priest, and when he placed the crown upon her head, the silver burned her skin. She did not flinch. Let all who defy me learn this day, she declared, her voice a blade drawn slowly from its sheath, that Vorindal does not bow. It breaks. Her mother smiled, a smile of pride and power, and how well she has sharpened her daughter. The nobles in the hall exchanged glances. Some smirking. Others, uneasy and shocked. They thought her a child-playing queen. They would soon learn she was a storm wearing a crown. And on the same day during her coronation she was planning her first mission ever as a queen. On the night of her coronation, Queen Vaeloria ordered the execution of every noble who had ever doubted her. But she did not merely kill them, she made their families watch. As the heads fell, she whispered to the crowd, "Mercy is the luxury of the weak. And I am never weak." The purge of the High Lords. The rebellion began before her throne was even warm. Lord Caelric, her father's oldest advisor, was the first to defy her. A woman cannot rule a kingdom of wolves, he spat in open court. Vaeloria listened. She nodded. Then, she snapped her fingers. Her guards dragged in Caelric's son, barely 16, his face still round with youth. "You speak of wolves," Vaeloria mused, tilting the boy's chin with her dagger. "But wolves understand strength." And then, she slit the boy's throat in front of the entire court, her eyes locked on Caelric's as the light left his heir's eyes. "Anyone else?" she asked sweetly. The nobles, faces looking pale, hands trembling. One vomits silently into his sleeve. And the room was silent in horror. That night, 7 high lords took their own lives. Their bodies were found with black roses clutched in their hands. With the nobility cowed, Vaeloria turned her gaze outward. The city of Vaelmire refused her taxes. She burned their granaries and let them eat their dead. The merchant lords hoarded their gold. She nailed their coins to their eyelids and buried them alive. The rebel prince Edric rose against her. She had his followers impaled along the royal road, their corpses left to scream in the wind for months. But her masterpiece, the silent court. Vaeloria did not rule, she dominated. Her laws were simple: absolute loyalty or absolute destruction. Any who spoke against her were given the crimson smile, their lips sewn shut before being flayed alive in the town square. Their skin became tapestries. Their bones, chandeliers. She did not rule. She terrified. And terror, she knew, was the purest form of power. She married twice, both husbands died within a year. The first tried to curb her cruelty. She had him torn apart by wild dogs. The second plotted against her. She locked him in a cage and starved him until he ate his own fingers. The fall of nations. Vaeloria's conquests knew no end. When the Holy Republic of Lysandria defied her, who dared call her the Devil Queen and march upon her borders? That was the biggest mistakes they ever did. Vaeloria met them not with armies, but with poison. She tainted their rivers, their wells, their very prayers. The priest wanted not to be any part of the rebellion, so they begged for mercy, but Vaeloria knew mercy is for the weak and she was not one of them, so she burned their temples with them inside. Lysandrian king decided to take back his words and apologize, knelt before her, broken and pleading for mercy. She looked at him with pity, placed a single black rose in his trembling hands as she whispered into his ears, her words sharp like a double-edged sword, "Go to hell and tell your gods I laugh at them," before she slit his throat open with his dagger. The free cities of Morthalin saw what was going on. They decided to form an alliance against her. She poisoned their wells and watched them perish in agony. Her most infamous act was the sacking of Vaelmire, where she ordered the entire city drowned. Her engineers diverted a river to flood the streets, and she watched from a hilltop as thousands screamed for mercy. When a mother held up her child, begging for its life, Vaeloria famously replied, "Drown them all. Let the fish grow fat on the flesh of the defiant." And so, the kingdom of warlords became an empire of nightmares. And at its heart, a queen who wore cruelty like others wear jewels. As the years passed, Vaeloria's reign grew darker, grander, more grotesque. Her throne was reforged from the swords of her enemies. Her wine was mixed with the tears of orphans. And then her crown. You can't even try to imagine the torture and pain. It was a circle of thorns, forever biting into her flesh, a reminder that power is never painless. Dear God, help us all. One day, as Vaeloria was outside the castle enjoying one of her days to day, ruthless, cruel and merciless orders her mother, the great Queen Lysera, suggests she show mercy. "My daughter, my queen, please, this is too much. I cannot be seeing our own people suffer like this. Some even have done nothing wrong, but you punish just because you can and you're still having fun about it. I know I took you down this path and at the beginning I liked it. In fact, I loved it, but at this point, it's becoming too much. Save your people, yourself and your humanity. Please show mercy on your people. Punish your enemies and the one who have wronged you." Vaeloria smiled, kissed her cheek, and locked her in the same crypt where she'd once been taught to kill, by her mother. Queen Lysera knew the rules Vaeloria put in the crypt cell. Once you step inside the cell, there's no food, water, or way out till your last breath. She knew what was the penalty if you interrupt her rulings, but she decided to give it a try. She was tired and broken-hearted seeing what a monster she had created. "You made me what I am," Vaeloria whispered through the iron door. "Now rot with your creation." A slow, echoing scream fading into the dark as she walked out. Some rulers are loved. Some are feared. Vaeloria. She made the world bleed just to watch the colors it made. And this was only the beginning. As the years passed, it was only a dusty cloud of chaos that surrounded the kingdom of Vorindal. A montage of executions, burning villages, and Vaeloria's infamous Black Court, where she judged foes while sharpening a dagger. Her laws were simple: disobey once, lose a hand; twice, lose your family; thrice. She invented new punishments. The Vale of Tears, where traitors were flayed alive but kept awake with herbs. The Drowning Choir, a locked room where singers suffocated as their hymns turned to screams. By her 50th year, Vaeloria had become something less than human. Her hair, once raven black, had turned streaks of bone white from the poisons she tested on herself. Her eyes, pale as ever, now glowed faintly in the dark, a side effect, some said, of drinking the tears of executed witches. She slept never more than an hour a night, and even then, only atop a mattress stuffed with the hair of her slain enemies. Her court was a gallery of grotesques. Blind advisors, their eyes plucked out for seeing too much. Mute servants, tongues cut for speaking out of turn. A jester whose skin had been flayed and re-sewn with patches of his own family's flesh. They called her the Eternal Queen, not because she wouldn't die, but because death itself feared her. One day the whispers of rebellion began in the southern provinces. The aim was to kill her on spot, but Vaeloria had other plans. She did not send armies with weapons, instead she sent plague. She said not all battles are fought physically and with weapons so as to win, but there are many ways to be in a war and win without raising my sword. So she ordered her alchemists, the ones she hadn't boiled alive, to craft a living weapon that will only affect the ones who want to attack her and her kingdom, a disease that turned skin translucent, showing the organs beneath, made victims laugh uncontrollably as their lungs filled with blood, left their corpses perfectly preserved, frozen in grotesque smiles. After the plague was unleashed, Vaeloria herself walked among the dying, dressed in a gown of plague-soaked silk, breathing in their suffering like perfume. "My final gift to you," she crooned to a dying child, stroking its cheek. "The honor of dying by your queen's hand." A child's weak cough, then silence. In her 63rd year, Vaeloria took a consort not for love, but to breed an heir. The boy, Prince Voris, was perfect. Cold-eyed like her, sharp-tongued like her, cruel, but not quite enough. When he dared suggest she abdicate, she invited him to a private dinner. The first course was wine. The second was his own heart, still beating on a silver platter. "Eat," Vaeloria whispered, stroking his hair as he choked on his blood. "And learn what true power tastes like." Yet the darkest rumor? Vaeloria kept a garden of whispers where the tongues of gossips were buried and roses fed on their blood. As years turned to decades, a legend grew. No blade can cut her. No poison can touch her. No man can kill her. Vaeloria laughed at the prophecy and made it policy. All male children were killed at birth, just in case. Every weapon in the kingdom was blessed by her witches. She bathed weekly in the blood of virgins to keep her skin unblemished. Even monsters have nightmares. Vaeloria's was her own shadow. In her final years, she trusted no one, sleeping with a blade, tasting every meal for poison. But paranoia could not stop fate. They say when the rebels came, she did not beg. She smiled. "You think this is my end?" she hissed. "No. This is your tragedy." But she forgot one thing. Prophesies love wordplay. The doors to her palace chambers opened wide and her killer entered the room, not with an army, but with a single dagger. A girl, no older than 16, with Vaeloria's own pale eyes. A bastard daughter, spared from the infanticide purges. Raised in secret by rebels. Trained by the last living which Vaeloria had failed to burn. When the girl stood before her, when Vaeloria saw her own face reflected back, she smiled for the first time in decades. "Clever," the queen murmured. "You're no man at all." "No, I am not. I am your own reflection. I will be the first and last of your blood you will ever set eyes on," the girl replied. Then she took the dagger lying beside her bed. The dagger, forged from Vaeloria's own melted crown, slid between her ribs like a lover's kiss. As she was taking her last breath, she whispered, "Let the world remember I was never kind." The words were followed by a sharp inhale, a slow, shuddering sigh. Then silence. A blood-red moon hangs over a shattered empire. The wind howls through the ruins of a once great palace, carrying whispers of a name no one dares speak aloud. A single crow perches on a rusted crown, its beak dripping with something dark. Every tyrant falls. Every nightmare ends. But some horrors refuse to die. As the days turn into weeks, and weeks to months, months to years, Queen Vaeloria the Unmerciful still haunted the living. She became the corpse that wouldn't rot. But death was not the end. Her body refused to decay, even after years in the tomb. Her fingers curled like claws, scratching at the coffin lid. Guards reported laughter echoing from her crypt at night. When the new queen ordered her remains burned, the flames turned black and spat out the skeleton completely untouched. They tried everything. Drowning her in holy water, the water boiled away. Burying her at a crossroads, the earth spat her back up. Sealing her in a mountain of salt, the salt turned to blood. Now, travelers whisper in fear that something deadly and terrible will happen. If you stand in the ruins of Vorindal at midnight, if you whisper her name 3 times, you'll hear the rustle of a rotting gown, and feel ice-cold fingers brush your neck. Some say she's waiting for the world to forget to fear her, waiting to crawl back into history. But was Vaeloria this bad? Was she born wicked? People always asked, wanting to know the truth. What did really happen to Vaeloria? You asked for the truth. But be warned, some secrets burn to be told. This is how the darkness began. The cursed origins of Queen Vaeloria. Vaeloria was never just a queen. Her mother, Lysera, had bargained for her. In the dead of winter, the then princess crawled into the hollow crypts beneath the castle, where the first witches of Vorindal were said to whisper beyond death. There, she cut open her palm and let her blood drip onto the black altar, a slab of obsidian that wept when touched by moonlight. "Give me a child," she begged the dark. "One that will break the world." 1,000 insects skittering in the walls. A wet, guttural voice answering in a language that twists the air. The thing that answered was not a god. It was older. 9 months later, Vaeloria was born, already cursed. Her first breath made the midwife's eyes bleed. Her umbilical cord was black and squirming, like a severed serpent. When placed in her cradle, the wood rotted overnight. This was no ordinary child. This was something wearing a princess's skin. At age 7, Vaeloria was claimed by the coven. 13 hags emerged from the forest, their faces hidden behind masks of dried infant flesh, and demanded the girl as their apprentice. For 10 years, they taught her to steal breath from sleeping men and weave it into curses. to carve runes into her own bones to mute pain, to speak to the dead and make them answer. But on the night of her 17th birthday, Vaeloria turned on them. One by one, she flayed the eldest alive, wearing her skin as a cloak, force-fed the second her own eyeballs, sealed the remaining 11 inside a witching well, where they still scream today. Their final lesson? True power comes not from sharing secrets, but from silencing those who know them. Every descendant of her blood carries the mark. Pale, glowing eyes that see in the dark. A black vein that slithers beneath the skin like a worm. The hunger, an insatiable need to inflict pain. But the true curse. They cannot die by mortal hands. King Varys II, her great-grandson, was stabbed 93 times and still crawled after his assassins. Princess Lysera the Younger threw herself from the highest tower, only to wake at the bottom, laughing. Lord Malric the Mad had his head severed, and his body kept walking for 3 days before it collapsed. Only 2 things can kill a Vaelori. 1. Another Vaelori. 2. Something older than blood. Many have attempted to erase her from history. All failed. 1. The scholar who burned the books. Hired scribes to destroy every record of her reign, only to wake up and find his library covered in blood-red ink, every page rewritten with her deeds. He was later found strangled by his own quill. 2. The priest who blessed her grave. He poured holy water into her tomb and the liquid turned to acid, melting his hands to bone. His last words: "She licked my face." 3. The rebel queen who built a city over her crypt. Erected a shining capital atop Vaeloria's burial site. Within a year, every child born there had her pale eyes. The city sank into the earth on the centennial of her death. You cannot bury the devil. You can only wait for her to dig herself up. There's a lone traveler standing at the edge of Vorindal's ruins. The wind carries a whisper. If you stand in the ruins of Vorindal at midnight, if you whisper her name 3 times, you'll hear the rustle of a rotting gown, and feel ice-cold fingers brush your neck. Some say she's waiting. Waiting for the world to forget to fear her. Waiting to crawl back into history. If you listen closely tonight, you might hear it, the faint scrape of a crown dragging across stone. The echo of a laugh that hasn't faded in centuries. She is not gone. She is waiting. When the traveler turned, a shadowy figure stands behind them, pale eyes glowing. A lone figure walks through a thick and blighted forest, her cloak tattered, her boots caked with the mud of 100 forgotten roads. The trees whisper her name, Alisan, but she does not look back. She was born to wear a crown, but she would rather die than become what her mother was. Alisan was never meant to live. Vaeloria, upon learning of her existence, ordered every bastard daughter in the kingdom drowned at birth. But the midwife tasked with killing Alisan hesitated, and in that moment, she saw the infant's eyes. Not the cold, pale silver of Vaeloria's gaze, but gold. Like sunlight through a funeral shroud. "Run," the midwife whispered to the babe, pressing her into the arms of a wandering witch. "And never look back." Alisan grew up far from the throne, but never free of its shadow. At 5, she made a village boy bleed just by pointing at him. At 10, she woke screaming as her dreams showed her Vaeloria's massacres in real time. At 15, she slit her own palm to prove she could feel pain, and watched the wound heal in seconds. The witch who raised her spoke gently, as Alisan shakes with rage. "The curse is in your blood, girl. But the choice is yours." Alisan, clenching her fists. "Then I'll spill every drop if I have to. I never want to be thing my mother and grandmother have created." 4 years, Alisan wandered, seeking a way to break the curse. She studied with heretic priests who carved holy words into her skin. The scars vanished by dawn. She drank elixirs brewed from dead gods' bones. They only made her vomit black bile. She let a demon try to carve the darkness out of her soul. It fled, weeping. Alysanne, laughing, wild, to the empty sky as tears rolled down her cheeks. Is this your joke, mother? That I can't even die? But keep this in mind: if I can't take my own life, then I will be very happy to take yours. Then, one night, the thing in the dark, the same that bargained with Lysera, spoke to her in a dream. The thing, licking her mind like a wound. You cannot break the curse, little heir. You are the curse. Alysanne, screaming into the void. Liar. I can and I will. Watch me. The thing, laughing. Vaeloria was born to rule. You were born to end her. Which you did, and now it's your turn, that is all. 1,000 crows shrieking as Alysanne wakes, her nails clawing bloody furrows into her arms. 20 years later now, Alysanne stands at the edge of the world, staring at the black ocean where the stars drown at dawn. In her hand, the dagger that killed Vaeloria. In her heart, the terrible truth. The witch, now old, dying, gripping her wrist. You could walk away. Let the curse rot with the throne. Alysanne, soft, final. No. I'll do better than that. She turns toward the ruins of Vorendal, her golden eyes flickering, first with light, then with something darker. Some chains cannot be broken, but they can be wielded. I have hope, and I know one day this will be over, she said. I am never letting them win, even if I have to die and save their entire kingdom, so it shall be. And with those last words, the witch who protected Alysanne's life smiled as she took her last breath, knowing that she can take care of herself. Sleep well tonight. If you can. And so, the story ends. Or does it? Hi my wonderful people. Thank you for keeping up till the end of this gripping tale of the rise and fall of Queen Vaeloria the Unmerciful. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment for more videos like this. It's your favorite channel Tell My Tales, before she tells it herself. Bye.